Imagine walking into a place that you helped build, only to be judged by your clothes. Imagine being treated as if you don't belong, not because of who you are, but because of how you look. That's what happened to Daniel, a humble man who entered a luxury mall wearing an old jacket, only to be insulted and pushed away by a guard who didn't know the truth. This story is not just about money. It's about respect, humanity, and the invisible walls we build around others. Every day, people are treated unfairly for not fitting into society's image of success. But what if the one you judge today is the person who could change your life tomorrow? Before you watch this powerful story, take a second to imagine yourself in Daniel's place, silenced, underestimated, but holding the truth no one sees. And if you believe the world needs more kindness, more justice, and more awareness, help us spread this message. Subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video. Together, we can remind the world that wealth means nothing without compassion. Now, let's begin the story of a man who owned the mall, but walked through its doors as if he owned nothing. The entrance nobody noticed. The afternoon light fell across the mall like warm dust, and nobody noticed the man who walked in through the side door. His jacket was faded, his shoes were clean but old, and his eyes carried a steady kindness that a busy crowd rarely sees. He moved as if time could not push him. He did not hurry. He did not boast. He only looked around the way someone does when they used to know a place well and want to see if it is still honest. His name was Daniel Cole. For most people in that building, he looked like a tired worker who needed a quiet seat. For one person, he looked like a problem. That person was the guard standing near the fountain. The guard had a crisp uniform, a heavy belt, and a lighter heart for strangers. His name tag read Parker. He stood with his chest wide and his chin high, watching for trouble, ready to prove that he mattered. Daniel paused beside a display of shoes that glittered under glass. He smiled at the simple design that he had liked years ago, a design that did not chase trends, a design that felt honest. He did not step inside. He only watched the shoes and the people who kept changing their minds. He heard a child ask for a pair that cost too much. He watched a mother do hard math in her head and then shake it away. Daniel's face softened because he knew that math and he knew the weight behind it. Parker noticed him standing there for too long. He saw the jacket. He saw the old shoes. He did not see the steady eyes. He crossed the tiles with quick steps. His voice tried to feel friendly, but it landed like a warning. "Sir, can I help you with something?" The words meant one thing, but the posture meant another. The posture said, "You do not belong here." Daniel turned with a small smile. "I am looking around." "It has been a while," he said. His voice was gentle and low. It carried the tone of someone who had been in loud rooms but did not want to bring that noise to other people. Parker nodded, but his eyes ran over Daniel's jacket again. "Right, well, this is a private retail area. If you need assistance, you can ask at the information desk. We like to keep the windows clear and the walkways moving." He spoke like a script he had learned on a day when he felt very official. A few shoppers slowed down to listen. Some smiled with relief because the guard was doing his job. Some frowned because the moment felt wrong, but they did not want to be the person who stepped in. That is how a crowd often behaves. Nobody wants to be cruel, and nobody wants to be brave. Daniel's smile stayed. "I understand," he said. "I will move along." He did move, but not because he feared Parker. He moved because he remembered what pride can do to a good man when it is challenged in public. He knew that Parker needed to feel strong. He also knew that true strength does not need an audience. Near the fountain, a young maintenance worker was polishing the stone. She glanced up. Her name was Leah. She had seen Parker take this tone with other quiet people before. She had learned to keep her head down because she needed the job. But she watched Daniel's careful eyes and felt a question rise in her. What if the person who looks small is carrying a story we cannot measure? Daniel walked to a simple kiosk that sold notebooks and pens. He picked up a plain notebook and ran his fingers over the cover. The clerk, a teenager with nervous hands, told him the price. Daniel nodded and set it back down, not because he could not buy it, but because he wanted to see how many people judged that motion. He was studying them all the way a teacher studies a classroom on the first day. Where is the kindness? Where is the fear? Where is the waste? Parker followed him. Sir, if you are not planning to purchase, please don't handle the items, he said. The words came sharper now, like a knife that had been used too often. We've had issues with loitering. I hope you understand. He waited, pleased with how official the sentence sounded. A few heads turned again. A mother whispered to her son, See? That is why you dress well when you go out. People respect you more. The boy nodded, learning a lesson that would take years to unlearn. Leah's hands slowed on the stone. She pressed her lips together. The clerk at the kiosk looked away, as if silence could erase the moment. Daniel looked straight at Parker. His eyes did not accuse, and they did not submit. They held a patient light. I do understand, he said, but I also believe in asking before assuming. He placed the notebook down with care, as if it were a fragile thing, as if everything deserved gentleness first. Parker shifted, uncomfortable with the calm. I am just doing my job, he said. It is a sentence that can hide 100 kinds of harm. It can also hide a plea. Please tell me I am not the villain here. Daniel heard both meanings. He chose kindness over victory. I respect people who protect places, he said. A safe place is an honest gift. But safety and dignity are siblings. If we separate them, both grow weak. The words did not sound like a lecture. They sounded like rain on a dry street. Some people heard it and kept walking. Leah heard it and felt her breath steady. Parker heard it and felt his cheeks warm. He did not like the feeling of being measured by a man in a faded jacket. He pointed to a sign that said, Nitrogen monoxide soliciting. We have rules, Parker said, and we follow them for a reason. He was louder now. He needed a crowd to agree with him. Daniel nodded again. Rules are good, he said. They are like guardrails on a bridge. But a bridge is made for crossing. If the rail pushes people off the road, then the rail has forgotten its purpose. Leah let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. It surprised her. The sound made Parker glance her way, and in that glance there was a warning. Do not choose the stranger over your position. Leah lowered her eyes to the stone again. But something inside her refused to go quiet. Daniel stepped back from the kiosk. I will be on my way, he said. Thank you for your attention. He turned toward the central atrium, where a skylight poured a river of daylight onto the floor. He looked up at the light for a long second. That was when memory stood beside him. Years ago, he had stood in that same spot with a team of architects. Years ago, he had pointed at the sky and said, let people feel hopeful when they walk in. Years ago, he had paid an invoice with a number that could buy a small town. Parker, still uneasy, walked beside him. Sir, which store are you headed to? He asked. The tone felt softer, but only because he was still looking for a reason to control. The path. Do you have business here? The word business carried an edge, as if business meant only money, and not the work of making people feel safe. Daniel looked around at the shops, and the people, and the light, and he answered in a way that was true, even if Parker could not hear the whole truth. Yes, he said, I have business here. I always have. A small crowd had gathered without meaning to. Some waited for a scene. Some wanted to see the quiet man leave. Some hoped he would stay and say the words they did not know how to say. Leah set her cloth down. Her chest felt tight, the way it does when a choice is coming. She stepped closer, but not too close. She wanted to stand where she could act if the moment broke open. Parker lifted his hand in a practiced gesture that meant stop. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to exit the building if you don't have a purchase to make," he said. The sentence sounded final in his mouth, like a door sliding shut. A few people nodded. A few looked away. The world can be loud when it agrees with the wrong voice. Daniel's answer was not loud. It was gentle and even. "I will leave if it makes peace," he said. "But before I go, may I ask you a question?" Parker frowned. Questions from quiet men can feel like traps. "What question?" he asked. Daniel turned his palm upward, as if he was offering the moment to the whole atrium. "What is a mall for?" he asked. "Is it only for buying? Or is it also for meeting, for resting, for feeling welcome, even welcome? Your wallet is tired? If a place is only for money, then the walls will be rich and the people will be poor in spirit." The words fell into the fountain and broke into ripples. Leah stepped forward one more pace. A teenager lifted their phone, then lowered it, unsure whether to capture or to listen. Parker opened his mouth and closed it again. He knew the handbook answer. He did not know the human one. In the space of that pause, Daniel smiled again, not at Parker, but at the light. "I will be back tomorrow early," he said softly, almost to himself. "There is still work to do here." He began to walk toward the side exit he had used to enter. Parker followed for a few steps, guarding a door that did not need guarding. Leah's eyes followed too. She did not know his name yet, but she knew the feeling of truth when it passed by. It felt like air after a storm, simple and bright. As Daniel reached the door, he stopped and looked back once. He looked at the fountain, at the kiosk, at Leah, at the sign about rules, at the skylight, and then at Parker. He did not look with anger. He looked with the calm of a builder who knows that a weak beam can be strengthened without tearing down the whole house. Outside, the air smelled like rain on hot concrete. Daniel stood for a moment and closed his eyes. In his mind, he could still hear the architects from years ago, trying to talk him out of the skylight because it cost too much. He could still hear the finance officer asking if natural light had a return on investment that could be proven on a spreadsheet. He had answered then, and he answered again in his heart now. Hope pays for itself. He turned his phone on and checked a message. A short line from his attorney waited there. Quarterly review scheduled with the property group. All tenants performing above expectations. Security vendor up for renewal. He nodded. He typed one sentence back. Let's talk about training before contracts. He slipped the phone away and exhaled. He walked along the outer wall of the mall, feeling the building like a familiar old friend who had grown loud and tired. He could fix loud and tired. He could not fix a heart that chose pride over care unless that heart wanted help. But he believed in second chances because someone once gave him his. Daniel had been poorer than the jacket he wore. He had slept in a small room with a window that looked at a brick wall. He had taken a job cleaning floors at night, and he had learned to move quietly so sleeping people could dream without fear. He had saved, and he had studied, and he had listened to people who knew more than him. He had learned that money is a language. When you speak it to serve, it opens doors. When you speak it to boast, it closes them. Now, as he paused by a service entrance, his thoughts turned back to Parker. He did not despise him. He worried for him. A man who must be loud to feel strong will often be cruel when he feels small. Daniel knew that training could teach posture, but only wisdom could teach sight. Seeing the person before the problem is the beginning of all honest security. He decided he would return not as a mystery, but as a mirror. He would not shame Parker. He would invite him to a better way. That was how he wanted to build everything he owned, with patience. That felt like dignity, and with standards that felt like love. Back inside, Leah finished the fountain and looked around for the quiet man, but he was gone. She felt as if a page had turned without her eyes. She picked up the cloth again and whispered, "Please come back." She did not know why she said it. She only knew that a place can change when one person asks a real question at the right time. And the question was still hanging in the air over the atrium, floating like the light. What is a mall for? The next day would bring the answer in a way nobody expected. The reveal nobody expected. The next morning came with clean sunlight and a quiet promise. Leah arrived early, her uniform still damp from washing the night before. She wanted to see if the man from yesterday would return. She told herself it was curiosity, but deep inside she hoped to see more of that calm strength he carried. The mall was half empty. The fountain water hummed softly, like a low song. At the security station, Parker was already standing tall. He had told the night guard about the incident, shaping it into a story where he was the hero who protected order. The story made him feel safe again. But stories told. For pride always hides small fears. He checked the cameras and the radios, pretending not to think about the stranger's words about dignity and safety being siblings. Around 9, a black sedan stopped outside the main entrance. 2 men in suits stepped out, speaking softly into earpieces. The door opened. Again, and Daniel Cole stepped out. He was wearing the same jacket, the same shoes, but his presence felt different now. Confidence doesn't need new clothes. It needs a clear purpose. He looked up at the building as if he was checking a friend's health. Leah saw him first. Her heart jumped, not from excitement, but from relief. She smiled without meaning to. Parker, who noticed her glance, turned and followed her eyes. When he saw Daniel, his brows furrowed. "Not again," he muttered. He straightened his belt and marched toward the entrance. He didn't care if there were witnesses this time. He just wanted to feel in control. Daniel walked slowly, greeting a janitor on the way. The man greeted him back with a polite nod, unaware of who he was. The 2 suited men followed at a small distance, quiet but alert. Parker stopped Daniel just before he could reach the main hall. "Sir, we talked about this yesterday," he said, his tone sharper than the morning light. "This is private property. You can't just wander around." Daniel looked at him with patience that almost looked like mercy. "Good morning, Mr. Parker," he said. Parker blinked. "How do you know my name?" "You wear it every day," Daniel replied, softly, pointing at the badge. The words should have sounded mocking, but they didn't. They felt gentle. Parker hesitated. Something about this man didn't fit the picture anymore. One of the suited men stepped closer. "Mr. Cole, the board is already waiting upstairs," he said. Leah's hands froze on her. "Mop." The words echoed through the atrium, like thunder rolling across calm water. Parker looked from the man to Daniel, his mouth parting in disbelief. "Board?" he repeated. Daniel nodded. "Yes, the board of the property group that owns this mall." The pause that followed felt endless. The silence grew thick. Parker's eyes flicked around the hall, searching for someone to tell him this was a mistake. But the suited men were already holding the glass doors open for Daniel. Leah felt a strange warmth rise in her chest. It was justice, but quiet justice, not loud or cruel. Daniel stopped before walking through the doors. He turned back to Parker, his voice still soft. "Yesterday, you did what you thought was right," he said. "You were guarding the place. But remember, a good guard doesn't just protect walls. He protects the spirit of the place, too." Parker tried to speak, but his voice broke. "Sir? I didn't know." Daniel lifted his hand slightly. "Now you do," he said. "And that's a start." He smiled, not to humiliate, but to forgive. Forgiveness is heavier than gold because it costs pride instead of money. He walked toward the elevator with his quiet escort. Parker stood there, feeling the floor shift beneath his pride. The radio on his belt crackled, but he didn't hear it. Leah approached him carefully. "You okay?" she asked. Parker nodded, but the motion felt empty. "That man," he began, then stopped. He had no words left that could fix the memory. Leah looked toward the elevator doors closing. Behind Daniel. "He didn't want to embarrass you," she said. "He just wanted you to see." Parker exhaled. "Yeah," he said quietly. He did. Upstairs, in a large meeting room lined with glass, the board members stood when Daniel entered. Some looked surprised that he came in wearing the same humble jacket. One whispered, "He still dresses like that?" Another replied, "That's why people trust him." Daniel smiled at the small exchange and took his seat at the head of the table. "Good morning," he said. "Let's talk about what this mall really means." Charts appeared on screens: sales, rent, profit. The usual conversation. Daniel listened, then raised his hand. "Before we go into numbers," he said, "we need to talk about values." The room grew still. "Yesterday, I walked through this building. I saw efficiency. I saw order. But I also saw fear. People afraid to look poor, afraid to care, afraid to be kind. Unless it was safe." An older manager shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, with respect, the mall is performing very well financially," he said. Daniel nodded. "I know. But performance without purpose is like a body without breath. Money is a mirror. It shows who we are, not what we own." He paused. "I want to change the way we train security. They should protect not only property, but dignity. The cost is small. The return is peace." Someone laughed nervously. "You sound like a preacher, sir," a young executive said. Daniel smiled. "Maybe, but faith in people is good business. Fear burns slower, but it burns." "Everything?" He leaned back, his calm unbroken. The executives exchanged glances. The air in the room felt heavier now, not from pressure, but from truth. He continued, "We will start with workshops. We'll teach empathy, not as weakness, but as awareness. If our guards see people instead of threats, our mall will feel safer than any camera can make it. And Leah, the maintenance worker finder, she will be promoted. People like her keep the heart of this place alive." A few heads lifted in surprise. "You remember her name?" one asked. "Yes," Daniel said simply. "She remembered mine, even when I didn't say it." Downstairs, Parker sat by the fountain, his posture smaller now. He watched the light from the skylight touch the water. He thought about what Daniel had said, that safety and dignity are siblings. He realized he had been guarding walls, not people. His reflection in the water looked different. Not because of his face, but because of what he finally saw in it, the truth of his own fear. By noon, Daniel's meeting ended. He came back down, no entourage this time. He walked to the fountain where Parker sat. The crowd noticed, but kept their distance. "Parker," Daniel said gently. The guard stood quickly, unsure whether to salute or apologize. "Sir, I was wrong. I treated you unfairly," he said. Daniel nodded. "And you learned. That's what matters." He placed a card in Parker's hand. "Come tomorrow. We'll begin the new program together." Parker looked at the card. It had his own name printed. Under the title, Head of Human Relations Training Pilot. His eyes filled with something he had not felt in years' hope. "Sir, I don't deserve this," he whispered. "None of us do at first," Daniel said. "That's why we're given chances to prove we can grow." Leah watched from a distance, smiling through. Quiet tears. The fountain behind them shimmered in the light, the same light Daniel had once fought to keep in the building. Now it seemed to bless them all. The mall felt different, not richer, but cleaner, freer, as if a wall had been taken down between wealth and worth. Later that evening, when the doors closed and the lights dimmed, Parker stayed behind, writing on a small notebook he had bought from the same kiosk. The first line he wrote was simple: "Guard the people, not the glass." And from that day on, everyone who entered the mall noticed something different. Not the shops, not the marble floors, but the warmth of being seen. And above them, in the quiet of his office, Daniel Cole smiled at the message from Leah that appeared on his phone. "Thank you for coming back." He replied with 3 words that said everything he believed. Hope pays forever.